Originals. Découvrez en avant-première nos interviews sur les séries qui font l'actu.
Dans cet épisode d'Originals, on est avec la dramaturge Katori Hall, qui est aussi la créatrice, scénariste, productrice et showrunneuse de Plein, qui démarre sa saison 2 le 19 juin prochain sur Starzplay. Hi Katori!
Hello. See, I knew I should have took French. I should have took it instead of French.
It's always useful. Let's say that. Even if it's season 2 now, let's go back to the beginning of the show. So how would you pitch yourself, P-Valley?
P-Valley is a show about strippers down in the dirty Delta in America. And it's a show that really takes these women and excavates their relationships, their lives, their choices, and in a very, never seen before way. The fact that it embraces the grit and the glitter of the world. It's just, you've never, ever seen it before on television.
Well, it was a play first, Pussy Valley. So how did it go from a confidential play to this hit show on Starz?
So the play was produced in 2015 at a theater called Mixed Blood in Minneapolis. And I must say, it took me a long time. It took me 6 years to write the play because I had done so much research. But what was so interesting is when I saw the play, I was like, oh no, it's not supposed to be a play. It's supposed to be a TV show, because there was so much going on, so many stories, so many amazing characters that I wanted people to have those characters live in their living rooms instead of people having to go to a theater to see them. So I ended up pitching it a few months later after I saw how big the play was. And luckily, Starz is the network that decided to take on developing P-Valley into an actual TV show.
Oh, so it was on your own volition and not the network that approached you?
Yes.
Okay.
A lot of writers, executive producers, they have to go out to Los Angeles and make the rounds to all different networks and studios. And what was interesting about me is that mostly everyone did say no. People wouldn't even let me come and pitch it because they were just like, oh, it's about strippers. No one wants to have this show and it be exploitative. They just felt like there was no way to do it well. But when Starz opened their ears and they listened to my ideas, they were like, oh my gosh, this is the way to do this show, to humanize these women and not shy away from their hard lives or sugarcoat the challenges. It was just, they really, really understood the reason why I wanted to do this show.
So with season 1, it was the first time you acted as a showrunner.
Yes.
And what lessons did you learn from this season that gave you probably tools to, go into the new season with less stress?
Well, the sad thing is, you go through season 1 and you learn your lessons. The big lesson, I think, was to be flexible, just because you don't know on even, the day what exactly is going to happen. Sometimes a location drops out, you have to rewrite. Sometimes a character doesn't work out, you have to rewrite. So that was the biggest lesson that I learned from season 1. The thing is, no one could have predicted a global pandemic, which completely shifted how you shoot television, right? But the fact that I had that lesson of flexibility that, was tattooed on my brain, I had to be even more flexible shooting during the time of COVID. Locations dropped out all the time. You have to shift the schedule around because this person got sick and that one person as well now. And so I think, I was ready. But real talk, nothing could have prepared any showrunner for, running a show during a pandemic.
Actually, COVID is part of the story this new season, sort of, in a very clever way, actually, how you deal with the consequences and how it impacted businesses and nightlife. And so how did it impact your writing when you wrote season 2, taking into account the pandemic?
So the fact that I am an artist who is writing for the theater and writing for TV. Let's talk about theater specifically. You know, it is a art form that is based on gathering. You have to be in the same room to take in the story. And the fact that you had this pandemic sweep through across our world and basically within one day end whole livelihoods. Like, I remember the last day I had in the theater, I was watching my show, and then all of a sudden it was like everything is canceled. Everyone has to go home. Like, just the curtain came down. And I was so distraught and traumatized, quite frankly, because you're just like, when will this end? When will the curtains rise? And so my experiences in the theater is actually what led me to embrace the pandemic as a storyline in our show. You know, just like in theater, nightclubs, musical events, strip clubs had to close overnight and figure out a way to survive. It is a business based on gathering, but it's also a business that is based on intimacy. And we were being told, you know, to stay at home. We were being told to stay 6 feet apart. And I just put my thinking cap on. I'm like, how can a stripper survive this? How will they survive? And so I just started doing more research on how other strip clubs did do it. Like, they did have, you know, drive-through strip club events. They did, you know, have 6 feet apart lap dances, but you know, they were forced to become innovative and, you know, embrace spectacle even more. And so I was just so inspired by the fact that these women figured out how to, in the midst of a global pandemic where you had to be 6 feet apart and had to wear masks, they still made their money. They still hustled. They went online, whether it was, you know, opening up an OnlyFans account. Like, there's so many stories of dancers who made hundreds of thousands of dollars dancing for, you know, thirsty, you know, rappers at home who couldn't go to the strip club, but they could go online and see a dance. We really looked at all aspects of that, and it's woven throughout the entire second season of P-Valley.
Talking about theater, so your previous works are obviously mainly for the stage, and the theater is seen as a serious medium, you know, compared to how television is perceived. So what were the reactions when you told people that you were diving into TV rather than, oh, I'm just this intellectual person doing theater, you know?
You know, I think it was applauded because in theater, we don't make that much money. We're struggling. So it made, I think most theater writers are actually trying to work on staffs and create their own TV shows if they can. So I must say that thing of like, oh, you know, she's such a serious theater artist, like that did not even come into play because, you know, a sister got to eat. So yeah.
We can feel a lot of the Memphis sense, I mean, vibe in your body of work. So what makes the city special to you?
My hometown is a city of strivers, hustlers, you know, that aesthetic of grit and glitter. I get it from being a Memphian. You know, the city has had a lot of struggles. Dr. King was assassinated there in 1968. And ever since then, you know, there's just been this hard road that we've had to walk towards racial conciliation, economical uplift. And despite all of those big challenges that I think have been put on a Memphian shoulders, we still figure out a way to create amazing music, create amazing barbecue. Like, it is such a beautiful place to visit because the people are so down home, so real. That's why the characters on P-Valley are the way that they are. They're based on all these amazing Memphians that I grew up around.
The atmosphere of the show is quite unique as well, with the lighting and of course the music, like you mentioned. The car wash scene actually in first episode is quite particular. How do you see what you write? I'm sorry, let me rephrase that. Do you describe everything when you write the script, and how do you picture it? Is it a sound, an image, or just the words?
I am very visual when it comes to my writing. A lot of people actually say that my action lines or my stage directions are just as important, if not more important, sometimes than the dialogue. I am so specific, so particular, to the point where people are like, maybe this is a little too particular. Like, give me, room to, be a little imaginative. But if you're a director coming into the show, you know exactly what you need to do, what shots you need to have on your shot list, just based off of what we lay out on the blueprint of the page. So I'm, like I said, super visual and also just poetic as well. I want people to enjoy reading a Katori Hall script, as well as directing a Katori Hall script.
P-Valley is probably the show airing currently that where you see the most skin, but also it's really natural and not that much glamorized. All your directors are women, I think, if I'm not mistaken, and most of them are women of color. So do you think that's part of how you avoid the male gaze, like we say nowadays?
Yes, I think that, as women, we know the history of cinema, of media, where, women, particularly women in this particular profession, they're often seen as wallpaper. They're the background to a man's story. And the fact that we put these women front and center and we see through their eyes, through their experience, something that has always been, for both seasons, one of our major goals is that we wanted to take people inside of the dance. We wanted to put our audience members up on the pole with the women. And so, when it comes to our sound design, the framing, and the way that we approach nudity, which it's, we're very honest about, how naked one has to be in order to be a stripper. Like, it's not called stripping, for no reason. But we don't, linger or cut a woman's body apart. We make sure that we understand, the reason as to why she has to do it. But also that a woman's body is beautiful because it's not based, we don't, focus on how a woman's body looks. We focus on what a woman's body can do. And so the fact that the show showcases these women as athletes versus just naked women is, I think, another reason why the nudity doesn't seem gratuitous or pointless. Like, it's to a point, but it's because, we're seeing these amazing sheroes flying around the pole, and, whether they're naked or clothed, they are majestic up there.
Being the showrunner of a show, are you not too busy to write anything else?
What's so crazy is that somehow, I don't know how, maybe because I'm, as I call a story whore, like I'm constantly thinking about story, I actually do get an opportunity to write other things. Between the first season of P-Valley and the second season, I wrote a play called The Hot Wing Crew.
And congratulations, of course.
So, I just love people and I love storytelling. And so I am constantly thinking and writing, much to my husband's chagrin. No, like, he's super supportive. I'm just joking. But like, the fact that I'm always pitching him ideas, like, what if I did this? And what about that? What about this? He's like my dramaturg that I in bed.
And just to wrap this up, are you a big TV consumer? What's the last show you've binged?
The last show that I have binged, 2 shows actually. It's Gomorrah and Station 11. I love Gomorrah, and no one is watching it except for me. Feels like, of my friends. But
maybe in the States less, but in Europe, I feel like there are more watchers. Yes.
Oh my God. It's a show that I'm like, I wish I would have thought of that. I'm so impressed with the world building and the characters and the plot. And I love how much story they get through in an episode. I'm like, oh my God, I wish I could do that. But yeah, that's one of my favorite shows right now, Gomorrah.
Well, thank you very much. And I'll say just a few words in French again. On va retrouver la saison 2 de P-Valley le 19 juin sur Starzplay.
Originals. Découvrez en avant-première nos interviews sur les séries qui font l'actu.